Welcome to the Elite Power Moves podcast, where we unlock the secrets to level up in all areas of life. I'll be interviewing some of the world's top performers in their fields so that you can uncover and learn the strategies that have led to their overall success and apply it to your own life. Mark, since joining Elite Power Moves Executives Advanced Health Program, how has this shifted the impact on your performance being a CEO of a global company of 3,500 staff members?
Well, I think what the program has given me is more energy. And that comes down to being incredibly disciplined about exercise every single day. And let's face it, that also sets an example for your team and your people. If you're looking fit, you're looking energized, people see that. And I think they also feed off it. So I think that's really important as a leader. If you look tired, if you look sluggish, people see that as well. So I think that's really important. So, it's enabled me to arrive in the workplace feeling energized, feeling good, high energy, translates across all walks of life, not only in the gym, but also professionally. What I focus on a lot, being the leader of 3,500 people across 6 countries, is that people are looking to you as the leader and they're looking to you for many, many things. But most of all, they're looking for you to set an example. And if I can set an example by, having a passion and a dedication to physical fitness and looking after myself, then that's really important for my people as well. So look, I think the program has helped me immensely in being a better leader.
100%. I think a lot of leaders needed to hear that as well. Mark, what new health practices have you incorporated into your daily routine after going functional genomic testing, and how does this feel knowing you have the insights to pass on from generation to generation?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting having functional genomic testing. Obviously, I've never done that before and had really not a great deal of knowledge about that process and how it worked. However, you do find insights that are really, really interesting. And what I've learned from it is, there are specifics about diet and what foods work for me and what foods don't work for me. There's also about specifics about what exercise works for me and what exercise doesn't work for me. Now, they're pretty valuable insights that you don't get, or that indeed you will never know about unless you do these things. And look, it's quite fascinating. The world of genetics is fascinating. The fact that, we carry on from our parents, we pass on genetics to our children, all of those sorts of things. So, but probably the biggest thing for me in terms of, what health things that I do is absolute focus on the food that I'm putting into my body, and how much and at what time of the day and all of those sorts of things. So that's the insight you gain from genomic testing. And, I think for, anyone with an inquisitive mind, which, let's face it, most really successful leaders have, it's a fascinating process to go through, and there's an enormous amount of learnings for you to take forward.
Yeah, it's I think it's just like it's one of those blueprints, really. Like, if you can have a blueprint that saves you time, money, and energy, then so many people out there guessing when they could be thriving.
That's right.
Mark, how has maintaining good health influenced you turning up to be the best leader of 3,500 staff and being a loving husband and father of 2?
Well, look, being a leader of a really big global team, you encounter all sorts of challenges throughout every single day. And some of those challenges, quite frankly, can come out of left field and things you didn't see coming, and all of those things. And again, our icon is even more complex because we're across so many different countries and different cultures, ultimately all looking to deliver the same goal, which is exceptional cancer care. So it brings with it a lot of challenges. If you're always tired, if you're always, struggling with your own health, or indeed the time management to fit in things that are important to you and make you feel good, you can't be the best leader that you need to be. Then you combine a really, really busy professional life with a busy family life. And, and I think one of my great challenges was, you're trying to be your best at work and you're always trying to deliver all you can for 3,500 people in the business, then you've got to try and deliver your best for the three most important people at home.
Yeah.
And that's not always possible. So, and I think many leaders would identify with this, you're your best at work, but then you're your best grumpy self at home, or you're short-tempered, or you're all those sorts of things. And I think what, exercise and diet has done for me is to have a much calmer demeanor, particularly at home, and to really understand that. I mean, it takes a fair bit of insight to actually say that to yourself. Someone says to you, you're so grumpy. Well, you're working really hard, you're tired, you're not finding time to do anything for yourself. And then, the people at home really need you as well to be a great leader and to be a father and to be a husband and all those sorts of things. So, and I think as leaders, we don't think enough about that. I really think about that a lot. And it's something I've certainly learnt through the program. I want to be at my best for all the important people in my life.
Marco, it takes to be transparent with you. I actually had a fight with Lou last night, and I've been working really hard. As you know, I run 3 companies myself and have a 3-month-old, and it's human. It does happen. And the link between performance and nutrition and health and sleeping better, it just snowballs into that family life as well. And I think I think a lot of people need to hear that, because it's the most common thing I hear of all my peak performing checks is the unfulfillment. So, Mark, what advice would you give to a business leader who's struggling to balance their health with their personal and professional responsibilities in their high achieving life?
Look, I think what I would tell to someone in that position is to sit down and think very carefully about your priorities. And I'll give you an example. I like to be in the office early. So, which means, I often starting work in the office 6:30 a.m., 7 a.m. All right. Now, why was I doing that? Well, number one, I like doing it. I like to get started. I'm fresh. No one else is there. I get a lot done, say, before 8 a.m. when the majority of the team arrives in the office. Okay, but if you're doing that, when's your time for exercise? Yeah, there isn't any. So what was making me want to be in the office that early was to get things done. And is there a way I can structure my day so I can still do that, but I also have time to exercise? Because I actually need the time to exercise. So in that regard, I was my own worst enemy, because I'd created those rules for myself, over years and years of habit and something, so what I'd say to people is think about your day really carefully and how you structure it. Schedule things really carefully. Schedule time for yourself. I'll give you a great example. I think you and I've talked about this before. What I learned from COVID is I wanted to pick my son up from school every single day at 3 p.m. And that's what I did, and continued to do so till he's got his own license in his own car. I know he doesn't want dad to pick him up. So, but that's really important. And it was scheduled. My PA had it in my schedule. Mark picks James up. So those things are really important. And I think sometimes we're too busy to take the time to plan.
Yep.
And I've been really guilty of that. And I think I don't do that anymore. I really plan out days to the nth degree. There's time for exercise. There's time for family. There's time for breaks whilst you're still getting the important work done.
I think it's something I touch base on myself, and it's like not having that foundation is like building a house on sand. And like you can do all these things, but eventually that house is going to start to sway and sink. But if you can put all the big rocks and the solid foundation first around family and health and, good sleep hygiene, then everything else is going to stay structured and sound. So, Mark, can you discuss any challenges you faced while trying to tackle your health and well-being before outsourcing it to our professional team at Elite Power Moves executives? And have you saved time, money, and energy with your genetic blueprint for life?
Look, great question. Look, challenges was actually getting started, being motivated to get started. I had this great home gym, and thinking about what I was doing in it, I needed a program. You need to start somewhere. And the first thing I needed to do was ultimately spoke to you and what's the program? What are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? So it's, and sometimes I think in life, you just need someone to give you some guidance on what you're doing. So, so we did that, obviously, and then we worked on nutrition and we talked about diet. We looked at genomic testing, supplements, all of those things. So, you know, pretty hard to do those things yourself. And what was my knowledge around nutrition beforehand? It was pretty basic, pretty rudimentary, what we're all taught in school, which, arguably 40 years later is not actually true. So, it's about getting someone to give you a push. And that's what I think I'd urge to everyone who, might be stagnating in their health or their physical fitness is, outsourcing and getting some guidance from someone is a really good idea. So it gets you going and then it sets you up for life. So, I do want to have a blueprint for life where, when I'm in my 70s and, I've got grandkids and all of those things, I want to be very active. I want to be fit. You see so many people who are old before their time. And I think we see more and more of it. So many chronic diseases in our communities and, people who are really, really struggling. And, I don't want to be in that category. And I think if people can focus on as you call it, a lifetime blueprint, then you can avoid it. And I think that's good for everyone.
Yeah. To be honest, Mark, most of the really successful high achievers that I know, they look at their time. They really identify what areas they can shift and what things they don't need to do. But they also are always looking at mentorship or learning. Like you can see with all the books behind you, you can tell that you're someone that has always grown to be the person that you are now because of all the hard work that you've put in. Mark, what advice would you give to other high achievers looking to fast track their health while managing the pressures of business and leadership?
Well, first I'd say find a coach, all right, and look at, and obviously talking to yourself, and I think you've developed a really, really strong program and it is geared around successful executives. So what I'd say to people is find a coach, but also find someone you can work with and find someone you can, work with a flexible schedule. For me, if I had a coach and they said, Mark, you've got to be in this park up the road from your house at 5:45 a.m., on this day, then I'm going to struggle with that because there's a lot of unpredictability in my schedule. There's a lot of travel and all those sorts of things. So you've got to find a coach and a program that works for you. But what I would say to everyone is make a start, because the more you procrastinate, the more you sit on your hands and don't do anything, the worse the problems can become. And you get into a comfort zone of, well, you're working really hard and it's a vicious cycle. You're working really hard, you're really tired, you're not making time for exercise. And I know because I've been there. So I would say to any successful leader who wants to upgrade, their quality of life and ultimately their physical fitness, find a coach.
It definitely is. Like, the biggest thing is, like, even myself, like, I've been a coach for 25 years. Sometimes we know what to do, but we just get sort of stuck in this bottleneck. And it's like the analogy where you've got the jar and you've got, you've pretty much packed it with sand and there's no room for the big rocks or, the pebbles that are your health and fitness and family. And sometimes, like, taking a day, looking at what you're doing, like, let's take half a day to assess my sleep and see what I can do to improve it, because you're spending half your time sleeping, and when you get better sleep, you have better cognitive ability, you have better motor function, you're going to turn up and be a better leader. So I think it's about, like, assessing your health should be just like assessing your business, like you do your KPIs.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mark, after 24 weeks with the Elite Power Moves executives team, how would you rate your energy levels after working with us? And how is your energy on the weekends, and how has this impacted your fulfillment?
Yeah, no, energy levels are really, really high. Working arguably harder than ever before, in terms of what we continue to do globally. Really high energy levels, really motivated. I'd like to think, my energy levels at home are really high too. You want to be there supporting your family as much as you possibly can. You've got children in school, that brings their own challenges. Your partner's facing challenges on a daily basis. Running a household is not easy, and it really takes a team approach. And I think you can either be present in that or not present. And to be present in it, you've got to have energy. If you're just going to come home and fall asleep on the couch straight away, which, let's face it, some of us do sometimes, it's not necessarily that much fun for the rest of the family. So, look, I think my energy levels are really, really high. As I said, I'm in my early 50s now. You move into very early 50s. You move into a different phase of life. Kids are up, finishing school, going into a different phase of their life, into university, with all the challenges that brings them. And you want to be ready for those challenges, which means you got to be at your best, and you got to have plenty of energy.
100%. Mark, while with the Elite Power Moves executives team, you traveled to multiple icon locations all around the world. How did the team support you with your health and wellness, and especially what habits did you change around nutrition and movement?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting too, because it wasn't always easy. First thing was always find a gym, and usually in the hotel where, as I'm saying, stick to the program. And I did that, working out in Singapore, Qatar, the UK particularly. I got stranded in Doha in Qatar for 24 hours during the program. So, I think I did a couple of days workouts in one day just to make sure I was ticking everything off. So that's the first thing. Also, when you're traveling, particularly flying, you can eat a lot of rubbish, and you can drink a lot of alcohol, because it's been served to you. You're sitting the whole time on a plane for long times and all that sorts of things. So really think about that and not do it, and then really focus on what I was eating whilst traveling, and also keeping track of that. Keeping track of the calories, keeping track of, protein, carbohydrates, fats, all of those things that I'd never bothered about before. So I think, again, by doing a program, you've got a framework, and you can follow the framework, and that gives you discipline. If you're just there and, okay, I'll have a sandwich for lunch. I had a sandwich for breakfast because it's easy. Well, probably don't need that much bread.
Yeah.
I think, and we know that. So, I think it's the discipline whilst I'm in those countries, is I want to keep doing what I'm doing, it's making me feel good. But also, I've got the framework to work within. And that's exactly what I did.
Yep. I was actually really impressed with how you tackled all your overseas travel, considering you've been overseas more times than I have in my whole life in the 24 weeks. Mark, I'm going to go into the rapid fire questions now for you. Mark, what's the most important lesson you've learned as a high-achieving CEO?
The most important lesson I've learned is the responsibility of leadership. You carry great responsibilities when you are a leader. Now, we have 3,500 people. It'll be at 4,000 before we know it. Those people rely on me for their careers, their livelihoods, and the decisions that I make, impact on those people and their families. So don't ever underestimate the responsibility of leadership. And I think that sometimes we see leaders who don't understand that at all. And, the example that you set, people are watching at all times. I say this all the time. I walk into any business and I can tell immediately what the leader's like, even if the leader isn't there. If there's a good vibe, good culture, people are welcoming, they've got a great leader. If everyone's miserable and it's terrible and people are rude, they haven't got a good leader. So I think I would say to people, don't underestimate the responsibility of leadership.
Awesome. What daily habit has the biggest impact on your productivity?
Exercise in the mornings. If I exercise in the morning, I'll have a great day. Lots of energy, problems solved, or great ideas. Amazing, the things. I love walking my dogs in the morning. the ideas and the innovation and the inspiration that can come to you just by walking the dogs. Sometimes these things can be kept pretty simple. Walk your dogs, and you can learn a lot.
Like, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Be bolder earlier. I look back, and that's a pretty funny thing for me to say, to be honest. I've been pretty bold over the journey, in terms of things we've been prepared to do and all those sorts of things. But, I think there was an opportunity to be bolder earlier and to back and have confidence. I grew up in country Victoria, came from humble beginnings, as so many great leaders do, and so many Australians share that story. We're a country built on people who came from humble beginnings. And I love that about the Australian character, which would give us enough material for a whole other podcast, I'm sure. Be bolder earlier, back yourself, have confidence. If something doesn't go right, well, pick yourself up and go again. I think sometimes we're so worried about failure and, have the confidence to back yourself. There's things I look back on now that perhaps I could have done earlier and in business. And that's what I tell myself now. And that's easy to say now with the benefits of hindsight, but be bolder earlier.
Mark, what's the best investment you've ever made in your business?
Oh, wow. Best investment I ever made in my business. Look, backing people at the time who were young, untested, and backing them to be leaders and accelerating their careers. I did that 17 years ago when we started in Toowoomba. Many of those people are still with me and in really senior roles. That investment in people has paid off so many times because I was prepared to back people who I could see were hungry, were motivated, were loyal, were trustworthy, and all of those things were true. I think sometimes as well in life and business, we're sometimes too scared to back someone because they might not have the right experience. They're not old enough. We don't think they can handle it. Be prepared to back people and then support them and mentor them. That's the best. The investment in people that I've made has paid off so many times.
100%. You obviously got a good, you're obviously a good leader if you got almost 4,000 staff predicted. So, Mark, how do you handle stress and stay focused under pressure?
Well, I think handle stress is I don't sweat the small stuff. I used to. There are things that you just can't worry about. And doesn't mean you don't resolve them and think through them, but there are things that I just refuse to lose sleep over. Okay, you don't sweat the small stuff. And manage your stress levels. Look, stress, a lot of it is self-created by the pressure we put on ourselves, and and then if you really think it through, well, why am I doing that? Why am I thinking that? There's a way here. So you got to manage your stress. And how do I respond under pressure? Well, I think about leaders that I've seen and how I would respond to them when I watch them under pressure. So I never panic. I always want to remain calm because that sends the message to the team.
Yep.
Mark's calm. Mark's not panicking. Everything will be fine. Okay, that's what we want to see from our leaders. And so many leaders we have now, we do not see that. Okay, don't panic. No matter how challenging the problem is, we take the time to assess, we analyze, we work our way through. You don't panic. Panic spreads like wildfire, and you watch teams crumble because someone's panicking or someone's creating stress levels. That's how you must perform under pressure. If you watch the really great leaders, their demeanor doesn't change even under pressure. They just they're immediately jumping to the solution.
Yep. Mark, what's one book or resource you'd recommend to other future leaders?
Well, Mick, is it okay to have shame or self-promotion with my...
I love it. Yes.
No, look, that is my available at all good booksellers.
You'll see the link.
Look,
Buy that book in the comments.
yeah. Look, that's my book, which I wrote about leadership during COVID. Look, great books. So many. You know, look, it's really interesting too. When I was a kid growing up, my parents made sure that my brothers and I read all the classics. You know, and look behind me in the bookcase, you'll see there's an old copy of Robin Hood. There's all the stories about King Arthur, you know, the Three Musketeers, the Count of Monte Cristo, the Last of the Mohicans. The list goes on and on and on. These are really old books, but there's something quite magical about them because the values and the things in them are really important. If I use Robin Hood as an example, you know, Robin Hood's filled with life's lessons. Loyalty to your friends, you know, the merry men, the band of brothers, all of those things, you know, looking after those less fortunate than ourselves.
Mark, what is your drink of choice?
Look, I love single malt Scotch whiskey, and I have it straight on ice. And look, it's interesting too because growing up, I never drank spirits. I was always, you know, drink beer and all of those sorts of things. But I've just developed an absolute love of whiskey, and you know, one of the other things too, and it's interesting, you know, whiskey in itself is a world of learning. You know, from Japanese whiskies to Scottish whiskies to even the great whiskies that come from Tasmania, for example, now. So, you know, there's some books on whiskey and what it all means, and it's actually an art form. So I think, again, you know, you've asked me my favourite drink, but there's so much to learn. So, yeah, no, look, I'm a big fan of whiskey.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, Mark, I've learned, like, just even though we're talking about the program, and we'll sort of cut it off here just so Gabe knows we're going to cut it off, but I think I just learned so much from you, just the way you see the world, and like I think a lot of successful people, what I see is like every door can be opened, you know, even though they're busy, they still explore things, they're still learning things and developing. So I just want to thank you for firstly coming on the podcast today, but all the stuff that I've learned from you as well, along the way. But like I said, Mark, I've been doing this for 25 years. If you ever need a nutrition plan or whatever, I'm always happy to help or serve. Like if you're like, even the training now, I just wanted to give you something to sort of get back on your feet after you got back as well. Cause I know you're a strong guy, but it's, you know, obviously you worked hard for all that sort of stuff, but I feel like the story, like of you going through that, I think people will resonate to. And I think the issue I see with a lot of leaders, they're not as emotionally intelligent as you to know, yeah, I'm not turning up to have that energy for my family, and they're leading this life of unfulfillment. But the second thing is that a lot of us know what to do, and they're just not putting they don't know where to start, you know. And it's yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. I know you probably got to head off and got other meet, eh? But just let me know, reach out anytime if you need anything.
Thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you found the discussion useful. Our goal is to positively impact the well-being of 1 million people's lives just like you by sharing the experience and knowledge of some of the world's top performers. So you don't miss out on any key strategies to help you succeed, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. And if you think you may know someone that would benefit from this episode, join us in our mission of impacting 1 million lives and share it with your friends.